Shabbat Shalom. Please be seated. This song, among other songs, but this one especially always hits home. Here I am alone. Beautiful song. I don't know who wrote it, Shaul. Who wrote that song?
Which one?
Resting Place.
Oh, the first verse was written by another artist. The second verse was written by me.
Oh. Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful song. It identifies with me because most of my life I've been alone. Not because of my choice, but because of my faith. In Israel, I was beaten and chased for my faith, claiming that I was a Christian, which I never was. I come to America and I'm being threatened with death for being a Jew. So it's kind of like, where do you fit? I listen to people, as I'm sure most of you do, but I don't just listen, I hear. And what I find is, especially in this country where colleges are almost a must, I look at people like Chaim Weizmann, Einstein, and others who didn't go to college. In fact, Einstein only went to 4 years of schooling. I come to the conclusion that really what matters is not your schooling, how smart you are, how strong and how fast, if you're rich, or you have invented something. When I study the Torah, I find that there's only one thing that God cares, and that's character. Character. Money will not change character. High schooling, medical school, law school, that's not going to change anything. God is looking for a character. What are you made from? The Bible talks about the tree being a special tree that's planted by the rivers of water. And when you consider how we compare to trees, I will tell you, speaking from my experience, that a tree is by far better than humans. It never moves. It is grounded in its place, and it's looking for the source of water. You know that trees drink water, right? You know that.
Yeah.
And they go up to about 300-400 feet up. Obviously, they have General Electric, who's got those big engines to take the water to the top of the tree. It's a joke. I'll tell you when to laugh. General Electric does not have anything to do with those trees. It's only God. And you have to ask yourself, what kind of a system do those trees have to take the water 300-400 feet up? Day after day. And you know that the tree has to eat. Otherwise, how it's going to get its growth? It's got to eat. And if it drinks and it eats, it must go to the bathroom, right? And yet, there's no Sherman, is it what called Sherman? The toilet paper. It doesn't use that. There's no smell. The trees never take showers. Can you believe it? Never. No soap, no detergent, no scrubbing, and they always smell so good. How would you compare the tree to you and me? Right? I mean, everything about us smells. I really believe that we can become like the trees. Because of all the things that God could have put a person to compare to, was not the eagle, not the lion, not the whales, but like a tree planted by the rivers of water. Because the tree never, I'm going to go to this church, I'm going to go to the synagogue, I'll, always looking, never stable, never, kind of like most people today are like the firstborn of Jacob. As Jacob, the father, told him, you are unstable like water. And so many people today are just that. They've been to death and to that, and different religions and different, always seeking, what are you looking for? What exactly are you looking for? If you find a place that they open the Torah and they teach you from the Torah, that's where you need to belong. That's where your roots are going to get deep and strong. And so when the winds of the evil one come upon you, you will be strong and unmovable. The bottom line is, folks, don't be flaunting and puffing about, well, I got college, well, I got this, and I got that. Let me tell you what you need to look for is character. If you have a good character, everything about your cleanness, everything about your discipline, everything about your obedience to your Heavenly Father, it's all part of the makeup, like Moshe, like Abraham. They have personality that fits that of Yeshua. They had character. Look at this. What is the father of hospitality? Look at Abraham, the richest man in the region. His wife was the most beautiful Miss Universe in the days of Sarah. And what did he do? Sitting at the front of the tent, looking for passersby so he can rub up to them and invite them to come to my home so I can feed you and I can wash your feet. And among the many people who've come and gone, one of them was the famous one, Yeshua. Yeshua came back on the third day after Abraham's circumcision and wanted to see, what is Abraham doing? And Abraham runs up the hill and bows down to the man, not to them, but to the man, Yeshua. And he asks him, can I wash your feet? I have preserved specially, not a goat, but a fatted calf. I kept it for you. I knew you were going to come. And he bowed down to him like people bow to king. Could we be like that personality of Abraham? That one of Moshe was the most humble man on the face of the earth. Obviously, this is a double portion, which means that I had to cut off a lot of the study so I can make it time for my allotted time. This portion is called Mattot and Massei. Mattot has to do, obviously, with tribes. But unlike other languages, the tribes in the Torah are described as staves, like a shepherd's staff. Consider about the staff of a shepherd, how he protects the sheep with a staff. He doesn't take martial arts. He doesn't take boxing lessons. He has that staff, which is, by the way, an extension to his arm. That's what I used to teach knives. A knife is not an extra tool in your hand. A knife has to be an extension of your hand. A shepherd does not have a knife. He has a staff, usually a little taller than his height. And it's there to battle the bad creatures and to save those who fell in holes. And God compares the tribes of Israel to a staff, a shepherd's staff, to protect and to save. So he compares them, the tribes, into staffs. Also talks about a regional council. Remember when Moshe commanded that all the tribes will have a staff, and only one of the 12 is the one that brought life. All the rest of them were dry and dead. Only the Levite priest, who did both, or all three of them, leaves, flowers, and fruit. That is the job of a rabbi. That's the job of the one who is the teacher. Now, everybody knows that Yeshua was an excellent preacher, right? Wrong. Yeshua was not even close to being a preacher. I learned from him. Everything that I know, I learned from him. A preacher is not going to lead you into the paths of righteousness and holiness and the fear of God. Never, 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 never. Nobody wants to talk about the fear of God because there's no money in there. There's no fame. You go to the big mega churches. What do they have? A very nice little story. And then they go out and let's go to the nearest restaurant and eat. Do they ever talk about the story, the teacher's teachings? No. They heard it, they clapped a few times, sang a few songs, and let's go eat. The real action of the Torah is the book of Bamidbar. The book of Numbers. I really don't know why the Catholics chose it to be called the book of Numbers, when in Hebrew it's Bamidbar, in the wilderness. We find that all military boot camps and training is done in the wilderness. This is where Adonai wishes to manifest himself to his people, so they cannot contribute the miracles to natural events or human affairs. Scientists have broken their heads for hundreds of years trying to explain why the sea is called the Red Sea. And they'll tell you, up in Africa, there is red clay, and the monsoon comes, and they wash the water down the stream into the sea, and it becomes the Red Sea. They will talk to you about water in the wilderness, not from Miriam or the rock, but some scientific reason. How manna came from heaven. Well, again, maybe those birds, and there was upwind and taken all that food up there, and then the food came down. Let's find a reason for it, anything, but never give God the credit that he is the one who fed them and quenched their thirst for 40 years. We come across a group of people, among them Yair, ben Menashe, who conquers several towns, and we will find Yair appear again in the next portion. And I'm sorry to bore you today that I will spend a lot of time on Yair, ben Menashe. In the book of Bereshit, we find some monumental stories like the creation of the world, the fall of man, the flood of Noah, Yosef's story going from a slave to the prince, of Egypt. Moshe delivering Israel through 10 plagues, the opening of the sea, God speaking to a nation of slaves and giving them his Torah, a rock producing water to satisfy over 3 million people. For how long? For 4 days. 40 years. Not 4 days. 40 years. With all these great stories, we conclude the acts of the Torah. But in comparison to the great acts till now, we come to this story about Yair ben Menashe. Nothing exciting, nothing, no miracles, no earthquakes, no separation, just the story of Yair ben Menashe. A little story without much drama. Or maybe there is a great drama that is hidden as we dive deeper into the story. Israel has waged a victorious campaign against the Midianites. Now, Midianites are kind of a interesting story with them. Midian, the son of Abraham and Keturah, who knew about the God of Israel. And really only one of them, because they're kind of an extension of Saudi Arabia. But remember, Saudi Arabia is not in the Bible. What is in the Bible is Arabia. Saudi is later on, the British have put names on all these, like the Romans gave names to Yeshua and his disciples. The Brits came and gave name to Babylon, call it Iraq. To Medio-Persia, he called them Iran. To Israel, Palestine, which was actually originated by the Romans. And now we find that there was no kings in Arabia. There was no kings. It was a tribal. And the leadership was not imams, what am I saying? The leadership was not kings. Let's put it this way, because he'll come to me in just a second. And one of those larger of the tribes was this man called Sod, S-O-D. And the Brits made a deal with him because he was the larger of the tribes. And they said, if you allow us to drill in your country, we will make you a king. And he agreed. And they labeled him King Sod. So therefore, Saud or Saudi Arabia was attached. Considering the story of Moshe and Zipporah, his wife, who was the daughter of the priest of Midian. In other words, we find that this clan of Arabians produced all these Midian or Midianites. They were aware of the God of Abraham and Sarah. They are aware of them. But for some reason, they still clung to the different gods that they were familiar with. And there was this one person, the father-in-law of Moshe, who has taught about God. But this campaign of Israel, which was victorious, No longer are they in the desert. Their destination now is toward the promised land of milk and honey. The story is about land of Gilead. I don't know anyone who talks more about the balm of Gilead than Shaul. But that's true. The balm of Gilead was famous, and many of those caravans have taken the balm of Gilead to Egypt, which was the backdrop of Africa. And this is known as the family of Machir, the son of Manasseh. They went to the land of Gilead, which was under the occupation of the Amorites' control. They captured the territory, and then we find more information in the book of Numbers 32, verse 39. I encourage you not to trust me. I encourage you to take notes and to go over them for yourself, to study. As the Bible says, study to show yourself approved. The Bible wants you and expects you to study. Don't take people's word for it. Take those verses, read them, study them. You have an obligation for the word of God. And he captures all their villages, and he named them all of them Yair's towns. The very word Yair is again attached to Yeshua. Yair means to light up, to bring forth light. And we find that the first work Yeshua did was let there be light. And now we come across this story of different camps from the different nations around Israel. And thou shalt not murder on Shabbat. But I did. So who was Yair, and why should be even interested to us about his capturing the towns of Gilead? Yair, son of Manasseh. Why is he called the son of Manasseh? While in reality, he was not the son of Manasseh at all. But the Bible calls him that. So something about the writer of this book that tells a story that we need to study it. So I'm going to give you a little Hebrew lessons here. We have Gilad, and many of you are saying it in the Anglicized, but I'll teach it to you in the Hebrew, because in English, Gilad means nothing. But the Hebrew is Gimel, Gimel, so we have two words and transform into one. It's not Gil, it's Gal. Gal. Gal Ed. Galed. So Gal is a wave or a monument of rocks. A monument of rocks. Considering that all the prophets of that day, whenever they would bring forth a sacrifice unto the Lord, remember, altars were everywhere before the temple of Shlomo. There was no synagogues. So you had these men of God who always looked for God, and they wanted to give him gratitude or to bring forth a petition. So what they would do, they would bring forth a wave of rocks, a pile. It's more authentic in the English by saying pile, but in the Hebrew, gal talks about a wave. a powerful wave. Whereas in English, it's dormant, a pile of rocks. Well, rocks are going nowhere because they're heavy, and that's it, unless somebody moves them. But in Hebrew, God speaks of a powerful force that actually is doing something. And what it's doing is, it's bring forth a nice, pleasant scent unto the Lord with their sacrifices, whether it's Elijah, Elisha, all these men of the Bible. They would bring forth a wave or a pile of rocks, and they would bring the elevation, and then they would sacrifice. That was the time where people used that as a synagogue. It is a worship place. Wherever they felt moved by the Spirit of God, they will build a so-called synagogue, and they would bring their petition, their praises, their needs, all unto the Lord. So God is a wave, and ed in our prayers, le'olam va'ed, forever and a witness. Witness. God is all about witness. Okay, he even commands us in the presence of 2 or 3, the subject will stand in court. Yeshua says, where there's 2 or 3 in my name, I will be present. Leolam va'ed. The end of the world is going to be brought forth by one thing, and that is witness. God is looking for us and all the believers around the world to becoming his witness for all the promises he told us and he delivered. When Yeshua comes back, we will be the ones who will witness that he promised and he came back to us. That's what Galed is all about. It's about a place up in the north, and they made a covenant there, and I will show you in just a little bit about Lavan and Yaakov making a pact, an eternal, a very dangerous commitment. As some of you who do the Shema every day, you have no concept of what you're saying. Hopefully it's going to be in the morning when you wake up after you washed your face and you brushed your teeth and you look and you smell good to the Lord. Then you can raise holy hands unto him. And if you go into the bathroom, you better wash your hands before you raise your hands. Otherwise, it's going to be bad. God does not want us to go there to him contaminated. This is why cleanliness comes next to holiness. Yair, the son of Machir, the son of Menashe, the son of Yosef. Who is Menashe? The son of Yosef, of a half-breed. Yosef was Hebrew. Osnat was a pagan. So his sons are half-breeds, both Menashe and Ephraim. In contrast, there's another story found in the book of 1 Chronicles 2, verse 21 to 22. I want you to listen. Afterward, Hezron went into the daughters of Machir, the father of Gilad, whom he married when he was 60 years old. And she bore him a son, Seguv. Seguv became the father of Yair, who had 23 cities in the land of Galad, or Gilad. This verse introduces Yair coming from the tribe of Yehuda. So we have some disagreements over here, a little confusion. So the writer writes that he was the son of Menashe, and here in Chronicles, he talks about being the son of Yehuda. And while it may not be a big deal at first, we ask, is Yair the son of Yosef or the son of Yehuda? It will prove to be a bigger story than we first thought. Not too many teachers and preachers want to tangle with this. They just, leave it for somebody else. Let's talk about the happy story. Well, if we're going to teach the whole Torah, not just part of it. Here is the genealogy from the book of Chronicles. Yehuda gave birth to Peretz. Peretz gave birth to Hezron. Hezron in Hebrew means the walled protection. Hezron married the daughter of Machir from Menashe. They had a child by the name of Seguv, and Seguv gave birth to Yair. So the writer was actually right. There is somehow in this story that Menashe is involved with this man. But what we need to find out is, why is he called of Menashe and not of Yehuda? While Yair does have a bloodline from Menashe through his grandmother, yet it does not make him legally from the tribe of Menashe, according to the laws of the Bible, the Torah. The blood that counts is the blood of the father. This teaches us why Yeshua was adopted. Does anybody ever ask, why did my mother Miriam, why didn't she conceive from Yosef? Why did Yeshua have to be adopted? Can anybody answer me that? Why was he adopted? Because if I'm right about what I just told you, that the Torah teaches that the bloodline comes from the father. And if this is so, then Yeshua would have been with the father, Yosef. But that's not what happened to Yeshua. He didn't have a human bloodline. His father was from heaven. He did have a mother from the tribe of Levy, who was born in Jerusalem, but moved to Nazareth at the time of the Romans because they didn't want to be under the rule of Rome. And to stay in Jerusalem, they would have, but they have more freedom going to Nazareth. So again, we find that while the grandmother had something to do with his line, but the bloodline comes from that of Yehuda. This teaches us why Yeshua had to be adopted. Not because Yosef could not produce. If this is the case, then why is the writer of Numbers discusses or disguise Yair, which means enlightenment, as if he comes from the tribe of Menashe? It appears the Torah begins with a bang, and reality it concludes with a bang. As often as I teach, I like to go back to Bereshit. I like to go to the very beginning. In these difficult and tragic times, this story is no different. Gilad starts in Bereshit. Yaakov flees his father-in-law in the night with his wives and children, and his wife among them is Rachel. Still believes in the power of the images called teraphim. So here's two words for you to remember. You have kasher and taref. Taref. Fit, kasher is fit, and taref is unclean. Unclean. Taref. Here we find that there is teraphim, so it's plural. Taref is singular, teraphim is plural. Why? Because it says that Rachel stole the teraphim. She stole the images from her father. Is this clock right? Am I going to be able to go through this? What happened? Who is willing to forfeit food and stay here with me until we finish the study? That's what I thought. Sorry about that. So, in the night, Yaakov gets his wives and his herds and his children, and Rachel steals the teraphim, her believing that they will protect them in the unknown travel and will diminish their power her father possesses. She did not tell anyone about taking them and sitting on them in order to hide them. When Laban heard of Yaakov's escape, he mounts 400 warriors from his clans and pursues Yaakov. He catches Yaakov, confronts him, and accuses him of stealing and fleeing. Genesis 31:27. He's asking, why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? You believe that? I don't. Genesis 31, verse 30. And why did you steal my gods, my teraphim? Yaakov was not aware that anyone has stolen Laban's gods, so he speaks with confidence and boldness. As a man of honor, he passes a judgment call that will bring disaster on his entire family. This is why I often tell you, don't make promises, no matter how good they sound. Don't make any promises until you're 100% sure. Better not to make the vow or the commitment and just go ahead and do it. Here Yaakov is so bold, so confident in his honor, that nobody would steal the teraphim. Who wants the teraphim? I would never do that, he says. But his wife, Rachel, did, because she still believes with her father's gods. See, God's power is given to mankind only. And there is power in our speech. If you don't believe it, just look at all the lawmakers. Do they have power? Of course. We have books and books and books of laws, of do's and don'ts. Does the king have power in speech? The king doesn't have to go out and fight with swords and guns and tanks. He's got a word. He speaks and the power goes. God is the same. He gave man the power. And he said to Adam, even though I created those animals, whatever animal you call by name, it will be honored in heaven. He said, I'll pass all the animals in front of you, whatever name you call it. So he began: elephant, giraffe, goats, sheep. It's all by man. Adam gave all these names, all the birds, all of God's creation that was given for man. Man was the one who gave the name. And if the angels from heaven came to talk about your goats, they will use the name that you gave them, that Adam did. God does not give names. We do. We give names even to our children. Or we're supposed to anyway. So, man has inherited a unique quality of power in his speech like no other species. And now, without knowing that Rachel has stolen her father's images, he proclaims a death sentence upon his beloved wife and his family. The sad story is revealed in the death of Rachel. On the way to Beersheba, the well of swearing, giving birth to their second son, Ben-Oni. She didn't make it to her destination and was buried in the middle of the road. The death of Rachel was a direct result of Yaakov's power in his speech. All these accusations and proclamation, including a covenant made by the one chasing and the one being chased, takes place in Gilad. After Lavan concludes a search in all the tents without finding the images, he makes a covenant with Yaakov. But listen to his covenant. It's not necessarily a positive one, but it's the kind of covenant that is made that appeases both parties, Lavan and Yaakov. Listen to the words. Let the God of your father, Abraham, and the God of my father, Nahor, judge between us today. That's to me scary. You want God to judge between us? God cannot hide. You cannot hide anything from God. He knows everything. In essence, he proclaims that maybe I did not find the images, but I know you have taken them. This story of Yaakov is not over. God will judge between you and me. Here's a pile of stones, is what Lavan says. It will be a witness, and that's what Gal Ed means. Gal Ed, or as we call it today, Gilad. But it's Gal Ed, a pile of rocks, and Ed is the witness. Here is a pile of stones. It will be a witness and a reminder between us of this meeting, of the swearing that took place. Right after they make the covenant, they sat down to break bread. You find this Semitic culture repeats itself, that after covenants, they always sit down to break bread. Eating is a Semitic seal of conclusion of the agreement. It reminds us of the sale of Yosef. After they sold him, they sat down to eat. Later, we learn how Yitro instructed Moshe how to structure leadership, and then what? They sat down to eat. Many years later, we find the same pattern after the crucifixion of Yeshua. Israel sat down to eat. What did they eat? The Passover. The Passover. While Yeshua is hanging all by himself there with Yochanan the beloved and his mother, Israel as a nation were sitting down at the Passover. You realize the connection here? The power statement here? What is Passover? It's it, passing over. Yeshua is hanging in there. He says, I am passing over death upon you by taking death upon me. That was fulfilled in that time. Whenever your preachers and teachers tell you that Yeshua had the Passover with his disciples, It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It was called what? The Last Supper. Because the very next night is when Israel sat down to have the Passover as a nation. And Yeshua, instead of eating the Passover with them, he was passing over them. Right after they make the covenant, they sat down to eat. There's something to be said about the fellowship, the brotherhood of we made an agreement, and let's seal it with food. Gal means a wave or pile of rocks. Ed speaks of, not Edward, but speaks of witness. Even as we dismiss our prayers with the word le'olam va'ed, means eternal witness, we will be the eternal witness in heaven for what transpired here on earth. Why are we greater than angels? Why? Because angels have never been married. They will never father a son or a daughter. They never experience the pregnancy. They never experience being born is already a strike against you, because we're all born with the sins of Adam. Angels never sweat. And I don't want to offend any of you, but they never drive a Volkswagen. Sorry. The curse of Yaakov has proclaimed death on the one who stole the images. Rachel dies prematurely. She was taken from Yaakov early on. Death many times does not stop with a person. Death can include even the memory of those who survive. In this case, it includes the children. Now, we know that there's a few people in history that are in our minds. In our schools, we teach about them. But you know, there's so many millions, hundreds of millions of people who brought something good to this world who are not ever mentioned. Nobody remembers them. Nobody knows their names. Where were they born? Where did they die? Where are they buried at? And nobody cares. We study in school about some people, presidents, generals who fought in different wars. But these are the exception. But for most of us, does anybody remember my father? Do I remember your father or your mother? I have no clue. And they will never be in the history books. But here, in God's keeping records, every person who was born of a woman was inscribed in the book of life. In fact, before that person is even born, God is already inscribing in the book of life their name. And God knows their whole life. Before they were born, he already knows what's going to happen, what kind of life they're going to have. And then it's up to God on Yom Kippur to either keep the names on the book or erase them. So there's no name and no what? Memory. That hurts. No name, but memory. Yaakov loses his firstborn Yosef in a sale through the lies and deceit of his own sons. Genesis 31, verse 32. With whomsoever you find your gods, he shall not live. In the presence of our brothers, discern what is thine, and with me, and take it. Whatever you think is yours, take it. The profound words will echo later on in Bereshit. The Hebrew word is timtza, find, and haker, discern, haker. Why am I even mentioning these? It's not because I'm giving you a Hebrew lesson, because there's a connection to something else before this. These are the words found in the sale of Yosef way back in Bereshit. Well, right now I'm teaching you from the book of Numbers or Bamidbar. But now I'm taking you right back to another story, and that is in Genesis 37:32. The brothers echoes the words of their father Yaakov, the one who uttered death to the one with the images. And the word is matzanu, as the word there above it says timtza, but here is the same verbiage. It's matzanu and haker now, the same words, haker, discern. We found Yosef and discern, or do you recognize your son's coat? Both stories are about blood libel. Genesis 31:54. And Yaakov sacrificed on Mount Gilad and invited them to eat here we go again, breaking bread. This is the first time we read about brothers sitting together for a meal. The meal is not a time of celebration, but one of challenge and distress. Bereshit 37:25 is the second time where the words echo, where brothers sit down to break bread. Genesis 31, verse 34. Listen to the words of Rachel. It will come to haunt her. Rachel hid the images on the camel's saddle. The word Rachel used is sacrifice. The very word Rachel means sacrifice. And she talks about plurality, not singular, but plural, of teraphim. And the echo comes now from Yaakov in Genesis 37:33. Tarof, Toref, Yosef, a double Toref becomes plural. Same spelling, double meaning, but both with the same outcome. Bereshit 31:34. It continues with the symbolism. Rachel took the images and put them on the top of the saddle. The specificity of details is relevant for what will happen later. And the word is bechar, means pillow, the kind of pillow you sleep on. It also means firstborn or oldest, or to bear new fruit, of which all of these was fulfilled in Yosef. When Yosef is sold and taken, he was the firstborn and oldest, the new fruit which will feed nations for 7 years in the time of famine, and he was placed on top of the camel's saddle. In order to have a camel's saddle, you cannot sit on the bone. You got to have pillows to sit on. It is as if Rachel is the one who put her firstborn on pillows on top of the camels. And I'm concluding with Genesis 31:35. I am not able to rise up before you, for the manner of women is upon me. In essence, what she was predicting is, if I get up, all you will find is a big stain of blood. The brothers presented Yosef's coat with a big stain of blood. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.